Bad Frank Phillips was a deputy sheriff, freelance gunman, logger, outlaw, an integral part of the infamous Hatfield-McCoy feud in the late 19th century. Franklin Phillips was born July 27, 1861, in Johns Creek, Pike, Kentucky. His father was William Billy Phillips and his mother was Mary King. By 1870, Frank and his siblings were living with his grandparents in Pike, Kentucky, Jesse and Nancy Phillips. Frank had never met his father, as Billy had died serving during the U.S. Civil War. Frank was described by other people that knew him as handsome with a pleasant expression, as long as he wasn't drinking. Frank married a couple times and had children before he bought some land in 1887 in Pikeville in the midst of the Hatfield-McCoy feud. He had been hired by Perry Klein, who was eventually would be his wife Nancy McCoy's mother's brother. She was a Klein, Martha. It was during this time that he bought this property that Nancy McCoy, who is Asa Harmon McCoy, Randall McCoy's brother, and Martha Klein's daughter. So she had moved in with him. She had been the wife of John G. Hatfield, who was the firstborn son of Devil Anse Hatfield. So John G. Hatfield had abandoned Nancy at this time and their two children and had remarried in bigamy, actually, after fleeing to the Pacific Northwest, leaving her alone. Some say he was in jail, but, you all can figure that out if you want. Frank and Nancy were married on September 5th, 1895 in Pike County, Kentucky, after finally securing a divorce from John G., but not before Frank and Nancy had been indicted for adultery in 1891. They supported their family with Frank's successful timbering business mainly, and the household had 11 children, 2 from Nancy's marriage with John G., who would be one named after John G.'s dad, Devil Anse Hatfield, and they called him Antsy, and a daughter named Stella. 5 from Frank's marriage to Mary, and 4 they had together, which is Elsie, Jesse, James, Flora, and Goldia. So he was known as Bad Frank because he was a little crazy when he drank, but beyond that, he definitely didn't have a whole lot of fear in the way he conducted himself. At least it seems so. The New Year's Day massacre that burnt down Randall McCoy's house, 2 of his children were killed, and his wife was severely beaten. 2 weeks later, Frank was apparently sent out to kill some of the ones involved, which had been Jim Vance and, others. But he shot Jim Vance, Crazy Jim, point blank. And he was also involved in a few other murders. But, so long story short, we have a video on this and we'll put it in the description. I don't want to get too carried away. He had got shot in the leg at some point. There's discrepancy on exactly what happened, but the point is that it got gangrene, it got infected. He had a doctor come over that amputated part of the leg, but it was kind of too late, and the leg is buried separately from him in the same cemetery at Phillips Cemetery in Kentucky. We did a video on that. So they tried to remove the leg, which didn't work, and he knew that he was going to die. So 5 days before he died, he wrote a will, and he did pass away at a young age, in his 30s. And a few years later, Nancy, who tried really hard to maintain her large family, also died of tuberculosis. And the point of this story is, with this new Lost Lives segment, I think it's really interesting to try to find Jesse James Phillip. So Bad Frank was known to run with the James Younger gang, and he apparently named his son after Jesse James, who was a friend of his. So today we're going to try to find Jesse James McCoy Phillips' grave and tell you a little bit about him. Jesse James McCoy Phillips, otherwise known as JJ, was born in 1892 to Nancy McCoy and Bad Frank Phillips. From what I could find, he had 2 wives, One I think he's buried next to, named Day Runyon Phillips, but we'll see once we get there if we can find him. And I also found that he got married at 83 years old to a wife not listed on his find-a-grave as a spouse. Her name was Lucy Margaret Lowe Lawson, and she was 66 at the time. And she is actually buried in Fairview Cemetery in Williamson, West Virginia, which is near our home. She's buried with her husband that died in 1961. So she died in 1986, which is a year before JJ did. So I'm not sure what that's all about, but it seems to be that they're both buried near older spouses. At least that's what the paperwork says. So JJ had at least 3 children, one that he named after his father, Frank James Phillip. Considering that his parents died when he was pretty young, he has, I'm sure, seen a lot of things and would have had really interesting stories to tell. So some people may say, who really cares? Well, we do. And we do these videos because others care as well, and those are the people we're trying to reach. We try and bring attention and light to people that may have been lost in time and thoughts, but we're real people with interesting history and lineage in these mountains. So yeah, we care. So today we're going to see if we can find Jesse James McCoy Phillips, who is the son of the infamous couple Nancy McCoy and Bad Frank Phillips. Hope you enjoy.
Now this is Mountain View Memory Gardens, and we did a couple stories here before. Garnet is right down there. We did a story about him and Mose Blackburn. He's right down there, right behind the mausoleum. And I've got some family buried here as well. I've got an aunt out there, some more back up here, but the one we're looking for, if I'm reading my map right, Jesse James should be right in here, if I'm reading my map right, if I have the right section. I guess go see if we can find him. Cooks, looked like it was just a few in. Okay, now here's one. Yeah, that's him. 1985. That's him right there. Imagine that. Went right to it. That's a first. I usually have to hunt for quite a bit.